Hello everybody, welcome to the latest edition of the Coaching Conversation. In this series, we're aiming to help business owners, business leaders and fellow coaches by sharing our experience and the experience of our guests who've coached people all around the world in all of different sectors and industries that you can imagine. So very little more to say other than do please now sit back, relax and enjoy this edition, and look out for a special offer for our loyal audience at the end of the programme. Hello everybody and welcome to this edition of the Coaching Conversation. And it's my great privilege to be joined this time by Liz Boswell. And we are going to start talking about coaching bold moves for female leaders, because that's exactly what Liz does. Liz, after a successful career, corporate career that is, you gave it all up and decided you want to be a coach. And then after that, you decided you want to specialise in helping female leaders. So please explain how you found yourself or how you put yourself in that situation so our audience get to know the real Liz.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you on this podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I suppose really I got into coaching about 14 years ago now. So it's been a little bit of a journey, but I absolutely love coaching. And I found that I, over time, became really successful working with large businesses, helping to coach and develop their leaders and managers to improve cultures of organizations, make them more engaging so they could retain their people. And, I was very successful at that. I worked with lots of, corporate companies globally. And over time, I found that what I really loved was working with people on an individual basis when I got the chance to do that. And I wanted the opportunity to work with more individuals, which was not something that my employer at the time was particularly passionate about. So over time, this idea wouldn't go away really in my head. And the fact of working with women to give them more confidence. Because what I found is a lot of the time on these courses for corporate companies, women were outnumbered by men in the workplace, and women were often the ones who just really needed the help in being more confident. And so I wanted to work with women on a one-to-one basis. So in the end, I thought, right, well, I'm going to have to do it. I'm going to have to show and lead the way, really, and set up on my own. So that's what I did. And I got comments from people saying, well, that's a bold move. And so I thought, well, yes, it is a bold move. And that is, what I'm about. And that is what I want to inspire other women to do as well. So that's why I called my business Bold Moves Coaching and became the Bold Moves coach in a nutshell.
That's it then. Yeah, thanks for that. So when you're working with your clients, do you think there is a typical client? Is there like a stereotype person that you're working with?
Yeah, it's interesting that you ask that, because lots of people out there, don't they, in marketing talk about your ideal client. And all of the courses that I went on, Graham, to help me with my marketing for my business always talked about it. First of all, what's your ideal client, and that you should niche. And I think I found that hard for a long time. But over time, that has kind of grown and developed. And I do have a really clear, typical client now, which is really female founders of service-led businesses. So that could be financial services, it could be that it's marketing services, could be HR services. So women who tend to be consultants or creatives, and they're very much specialists in their niche. So a subject matter expert, who have probably had a corporate career themselves as well, left that corporate career to set up on their own and followed a similar path to myself and found that they're very, very good at what they do. And that's why I love working with these women. They've got such a high level of talent and capability, but what they don't have is the confidence to sell themselves and put themselves out there, a lot of the time due to our friend imposter syndrome.
It's interesting that, because obviously it is a niche, but it's still a very big niche, isn't it? I mean, there's a world of services out there,
Yeah.
and a world of professions that anybody could be in, whether male or female. Do you find that we've mentioned imposter syndrome, and I can't imagine it won't come up again in our chat, but do they have common challenges, things that you see again and again and again?
Yeah, so I think some of the common challenges are speaking about their business. And this was one of the reasons why I did niche right down into public speaking, because that seemed to be the area that I was helping with women with, particularly networking, actually getting out there and networking to talk about their business. And what I found is a lot of women are nervous about going to networking events. They sort of see them as a lot of men in suits standing around, where they can't get into the conversation. They've maybe just not quite found the right network for themselves. They're also nervous about speaking about what it is that they do, because maybe somebody else in the room there will do what they do as well. So I think networking comes up quite a lot, and also sales as well. So client meetings, discovery calls, how to put your point across, how to sell yourself. And I think the third thing is about valuing yourself and your expertise. I think charging the right amount. One of the ways that I've helped my clients is looking at, what are you actually charging for your services? And is it enough? Do you need to be more confident in your pricing?
See, these are bold moves, and I'm not trying to make a punt at this. I'm being deadly serious now. Actually, throwing yourself into a networking event, if that's not your comfort zone, if you're naturally extrovert, not naturally extrovert, that's a real challenge. No question about that.
Yeah, definitely.
Equally, going out there and saying this is the price, and if you don't want it, I ain't doing it, is equally a bold thing to do, because it's easier to do it for the price they're prepared to pay for than keep hunting around for more business. I clearly share everything that you said and the importance of it, but it is for anybody, and it's not limited to female coaches, being able to actually do that and do it confidently and then ultimately competently is a genuine challenge, no doubt about that.
I think you're right, Graham, because you'll know yourself from like running your own consultancy and business, from finding the work can be a real challenge, and finding clients and retaining and keeping those clients. So when someone comes to you, and says, can you help me with this? And this is our budget, this is what we're prepared to pay, then it's very hard to say no to, isn't it? It's very hard to say, oh, hang on a minute. This is the price that I charge, or this is my actual service. So what I find, and I've done this myself, so I'm learning from experience, is that we say yes to things that maybe aren't quite in our comfort zone, and that we're challenging ourselves really to do something that's maybe not in that zone of genius for us. And so as a result, that can be really difficult. So you're right, making that change to say, this is what I do, this is my service, and this is the price that I charge, means then saying no to people that don't fit that, which is very, very difficult to do.
Particularly when you're a startup, or you're a one-man band, or in this context a one-lady band, because it's easier to say yes and do it and have the money than to say no and carry on the hunt for the right work. But the truth is, in the very long term, there will be enough of the right work, and the right work will take up the right amount of the limited time you have available to provide you with the income that you're seeking and that you need for your business.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about this, and there's 2 points I'd make about this. One of the things I find myself coaching, particularly when it's people with micro businesses, is it's very difficult to get the mix right between selling and doing. Because when you're doing, you're not selling. And when you're selling, you're not doing. And the doing is where you get the money from. And it's very easy to embroil yourself endlessly in the work that you've got and neglect the selling because it's challenging. And then you run out of a pipeline and then there's a gap in earnings. So that's the first thing I'd say. The second thing I'd say is a long time ago, a guy called Will Kintish, who you may know.
Yeah, no, Will Kintish, yeah.
Well, Will is the guru of networking, isn't he?
He certainly is.
And he's the guy that coined the phrase that networking is very close to not working. If you don't throw yourself into it, if you aren't disciplined about the way you go about it, it becomes a complete waste of time. And so if you're just going for a chat, well, probably best not go to a networking event, really.
Yeah.
I find myself continually coaching these things. Now, the interesting thing is I can absolutely share with you the application for the micro businesses, but I'm now going to share another little secret. It's true in big organizations. There are people that find themselves in networking events, whether that's a large firm of solicitors or manufacturing company, whether it's a conference, whether it's a seminar, whether it's a trade show, it's networking. It's just not the BNI format, it's something else. And how do they make the most of it? How do they create a presence? How do they create an image or an industry or a sector position that adds value to their business, to their career, and so on? So it isn't limited to the micro business. And the bit about even in bigger businesses, recognizing that senior executives are customer facing, whether they choose to be or not, and making time to do that well and not be absorbed only in the internal stuff is equally something I see a lot. And it's really interesting. It's obvious and understandable in the micro business, but it really exists everywhere.
I completely agree. And like, I've not spoken to you about this before. I don't think I've spoken on a podcast about this before at all. But before I got into coaching and training, I worked for 14 years in the publishing industry and in advertising sales, and worked on trade magazines where we had to go to exhibitions or America and Europe and all of that. And I was going to see customers there and also network as well. And it was so hard, because with magazine publishing, you only get a certain window to hit your deadline to fill that magazine, and you're constantly on a deadline. And that was always a challenge. And I think that's where it really helped me commercially to always be thinking about, like, where's the next deadline and where's the next quarter going to be coming from, and kind of planning ahead, because we don't always have that mindset. But sometimes I'd be spending time at exhibitions and getting involved in trade shows and the planning. So I lost dropped the ball and missed the next quarter, and then thinking, why have I not hit my target on the next quarter? Oh, it's because of this. And then it was constantly up and down in sales. And I think if you've got a sales background, you can relate to that. But if you have come from a doing job, where you're a designer, say, or you're in a HR role, or you're an IT specialist, and you've not been used to having to plan for those sales targets, then actually starting to do that in your own business can be really challenging.
It can. Coming back to bold moves for female leaders, and you perhaps touched on it to some extent in what
Mm.
you just said, but do you find that perhaps the different services, the different areas, say HR, IT, they have different challenges, or again, do you find that that's really the same, just in a different organisation?
I think the women that I work with predominantly are sole traders, so they're working on their own. So they don't necessarily have a team around them. So one of the challenges often can be that, working in isolation. And I think that's a common challenge that I see across the board in terms of, all of my clients. In terms of different challenges, I think there are some, and it's probably due to the industry and the service that you're trying to sell can be different. But a lot of the time, we're all targeting the same kind of people. So it might be that we're trying to speak to directors of businesses, or we're trying to speak to sales directors, or we're trying to speak to HR people. So that's very, very similar. So I guess my answer is they're all pretty similar, and I think that helps because it's often something that I can relate to as well.
And do you find with these female leaders that time management, because of lots of other responsibilities, perhaps childcare and all sorts of other
Yeah,
things that are in the
yeah,
background here, does
yeah.
that feature?
Oh yeah, huge, huge. I think there's a few things in there with time management, Graham. You'll know this. There's no silver bullet, is there, to being able to manage your time. There's so many books and things out there that that you can look at with time management. Oh, one thing that I find that I help my clients with a lot is procrastination. I think that's one of the biggest things. I know my mum always says, my grandfather used to say, procrastination is the thief of time. And it is, isn't it? Because when we're putting things off, then we're just not moving forward. We're not getting things done. So I think people often find that suddenly their time management is better from working with me. It's not that I'm teaching them about time management as such, but it's just taking action. That's what I'm passionate about. And I think our time is wisely spent when we get things done, when we take action and move forward.
Does that sometimes take you into the risk zone, helping people evaluate, I'm going to make a decision, I might not know all the facts, or
Yeah.
it could be risky for this reason or that reason. Do you find yourself coaching people to work out how they feel about that risk, how they measure that risk, and what decision to take?
Yeah, definitely. Decision making and thinking about actually how do you how do you do that? How do you decide whether you're gonna take action or not? I suppose for me, my methodology that I work with people on is making sure that you've got a really clear purpose, direction, goals. It's probably the same as yourself, Graham, for any coach. I think if you've got a really clear purpose and clear goals, and you know where you're heading, that makes it easier to make decisions. And
Yeah, does
of
this
course,
decision take me in that direction, or is it just
yeah,
distraction?
is it
Okay.
going to take you closer to your goal or away from your goal?
Yeah, I understand. Um, as you've developed the skill set with this particular audience, this particular client base, have you developed very, very particular, very unique techniques, beyond the normal coaching skills of open questioning and so on, and holding people accountable to what they say they're going to do? Ignoring all of that, have you developed further, as I say, unique, particular skills that are really good with working with this female leadership audience?
Yeah, I think I have, and sort of niched into certain areas based on what it is that I'm trying to help women do, make those bold moves. So I have a bold moves, framework that I help women with, but it's basically mainly based around change management and the change curve a lot of the time. And it's helping with the emotional side of what we put off and why we don't make bold moves forward. So when I'm working with women on coaching programs, those are the key areas that I will help them with. So, for example, one of those is the mindset. If we go back to imposter syndrome, this is one of the key areas I think that I work with women on, is like thinking about, why is that happening to you? What are those beliefs that you're having, and how true are they? So one of the things that I use with women is getting them to think about their expertise, for example. So part of my program is getting women to keep a track of, what are your expertise, what are the things that you're really, really good at, and what are your strengths. And as part of that, I became qualified in the DISC profiling. So I don't know if you've got
very familiar with it. Yeah.
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 Yeah, so I know we'd not discussed that, but yeah, so I think that's one of the skills that I use, is to help to create a profile for my clients, to help them really understand themselves on a deeper level, so that then when we're working through, why am I not moving forward, why am I finding this a challenge, we can link back to who they are as a person, their characteristics. What is it about your personality? Is it this because you're being too analytical? Is this because you're too much looking at the big picture and you're missing the detail? So we can work around that.
Just for the audience, DISC is a psychometric profiling.
Yeah, sorry.
No. You and I know it really well, so it's easy for us. And DIS and C are the descriptors for 4 primary behavioural traits that all of us at work would have. And so I can absolutely see the linkage between the DISC profile of somebody and their natural preferred behaviours, which could be getting in the way of making a successful business, or indeed generating issues around imposter syndrome, lack of confidence, and all that. So I personally totally see all of that, and I hope our audience, who might be less familiar with this, can trace that it really is there.
I mean, you can obviously look it up yourself and look at how to create your own DISC profile, so that you can understand your preferred traits as well, and what might be holding you back. For example, I know, like myself, I'm from the DISC. I'm very much like on the I preference. So I'm very much the kind of big picture and get all excited and enthusiastic about things, but sometimes miss the minute detail. And working as a solo, business owner, that can sometimes be a challenge. But my husband is predominantly the C characteristic, the more kind of cautious and, analytical. So I will get him to check things like my proposals, like read through blogs and things like that I've written, just so that he can kind of like look for the detail and see if I've missed something. So it can be really helpful to understand yourself. I think that's the thing for me, is self-belief comes from starting out on self-awareness, really understanding yourself.
Yeah, it does. Confidence comes from believing in yourself, and to do that, you've got to know yourself, haven't you?
Yeah.
Has the pandemic, do you think, done anything, the aftermath of the pandemic, the quote unquote return to normal, has that brought any changes to your practice, to your clients' challenges?
Yeah, so much. I mean, I don't know how it affected you, Graham, but like when just before the pandemic hit, I had a 2-day course booked to do an in-person public speaking course for 8 women. And was like, oh, I'm so excited about this. It's all planned, and I had to cancel it. And overnight, like all of us, went from, doing things in person to doing things online. I'm not a tech person, Graham. It's not my strength at all. So it's been really frustrating for me having to learn all this technology. But I very much tried to embrace it as an opportunity and think, right, how can this help my business? And the type of thing we're doing now, I don't think we'd be doing this now if we didn't have this technology, would we, and way of working.
Definitely.
Um,
No.
and I think probably at the moment, still 70% of my coaching I do online.
Wow.
And yeah, and that's through choice. And I've got to be honest, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this as well, is that for me, I think there's a lot of benefits to doing coaching online, because what I've found is that we're very present, we're very much in the moment when we're online coaching. Because, and I've coached people in business before, in the offices, things can be going on in the background, and I know that can happen at home as well, but we're very focused. So I think that's one thing. And also for me as a coach, I can see people up a lot closer on the video. And those little micro expressions and things that people do, facial expressions, or they move the body in a certain way. And sometimes it can give us a signal as a coach that somebody's feeling a bit uncomfortable, and we can ask them about that. So I think there's been lots of benefits for me in that respect of coaching online. But what about for you as well?
That's interesting, actually. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. The experience of living through the pandemic and everybody moving on to Zoom and Teams and whatever else that was available has made it a very, very common practice. And the fear for everybody's gone, and we all know how to do the basics, and some of us are expert at it with all the frills and so on. And so having a meeting with somebody, even a one-to-one meeting with somebody using Zoom is really, really common. And everybody's calm and relaxed and cool with it. So I think that's a foundational change. That's a shift, as it were. I have an international coaching practice, so from a practical point of view, there are some people that there's no way I'm going to do it face to face. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So for that percentage, it is entirely remote using a video conferencing system. Where I can, I want to meet people. Where I can, I prefer to do my coaching face to face. But that isn't always doable. Diaries, travel, all sorts of reasons. I mean, that I guess the majority of my UK-based coaching programs are a hybrid.
Yes.
They're a mix of some and some. And certainly when it's the setup meeting, I really like to meet people in the flesh and talk about the opportunities and challenges and goals and all that stuff and get to know them. I quite like going to their premises because I like to understand their situation, possibly
Yes.
get a sense of the culture, perhaps get a sense
Yeah.
of the ambience and what world they're living in.
Yeah.
But again, that's not always possible for lots of reasons. But that's my preference. So
Yeah.
certainly for me, the pandemic has shifted to what would have been exclusively face-to-face type coaching to include this kind of conversational, digital conversational tooling. When it just moving the conversation on, as a coach, and this is about you now, not about your coachees.
Yeah.
What's your greatest sense of achievement when as the program's unfolding? What makes you think, oh, I'm really getting something out of this?
Do you know what I love? I think this is one of the reasons that I've niched into public speaking, is that I have a short 4-week transformational program that I use, and it's helping women go from fearful to fearless. So and again, it doesn't just have to be women, but so people join the program. They've usually agreed to do a talk, or they're going to speak at an event, and they're having sleepless nights about it. They're really worried about it, and they come to me in that state, and we start working on the mindfulness and the mindset, preparing them for it. And then we do preparation, preparing the actual talk, and who is the audience and what do they want to get from it. They prepare the slides, and then I give them some mentoring on that. And then the final piece is that they practice it with me just like we are doing now. I give them some feedback, and they do that a couple of times, and then they go and actually give the talk. Now, what I love, a couple of times I've been able to then be at the event when that person's going to give. And honestly, Graham, that is just incredible for me. I mean, recently I had a client who the day before her talk sent me a message on WhatsApp saying, I don't think I can do this, I'm going to have to cancel. And I sent her a voice note and reminded her of some of the things that she has achieved and where she has been really brave in her life and that she could do it. And so she did. And, I was able to be there and see her speak. And it was just an incredible moment. And that for me is the biggest sense of achievement. And it's why I do what I do. Not for me, but to see other people succeed and really break through that fear.
Liz, it's been great chatting with you today. Thank you for your time. Our audience are going to want to find you, reach out to you. How can they do exactly that?
So I think the easiest way is if they go to the website, which is boldmovescoach.co.uk. And if they go on the website, they can go and find out all about how to work with me on there and our services. Go and have a look at the Bold Voices Speaking Academy. We have a membership for women, so you can have a look at that on there. We're opening the doors on the 11th of September for new members. We're taking on 12 new members in September, so have a look. And if you're listening to this later, we'll have the next level of members in January. So you can always contact me and get on the waiting list. Or you can follow me on social media just search for Bold Moves Coach on Google. You'll find me.
Liz, thank you very much. And everybody, thanks for your time and listening in and watching in. And we'll see you again on the coaching conversation the next time. Bye.
Thank you, Graham. Bye-bye.
So there you have it, the latest edition of the Coaching Conversation. Hope you enjoyed it, hope you found it useful, and I hope it did what it set out to do. As promised at the beginning of the programme, here is a special offer for you, our loyal audience. If you reach out to me at gwiley@sagegreen.com and mention this podcast, we'll make available to you a coaching programme for you and all your team at a 50% discount. So where can you reach us? So it's definitely gwiley@sagegreen.com. You can also reach us at the Executive Mindset at sagegreen.com, and our website is clearly theexecutivemindset.co.uk. If you enjoyed this, do please leave us with a wonderful rating on Google. We'd really appreciate that. So nothing more for me to say now other than see you again soon.